WCEG Network. I am William Bill Edwards, host of Wisdom Wednesdays. For the next hour, I'm going to be talking to two good friends of mine, Mr. Nick Byers, president of South Fulton Parkway Alliance, and Mr. Harold Reed, who's on the board of the Parkway Alliance. This conversation is going to focus on the importance of partnerships in foregoing economic development. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great today. Glad to be on
wonderful.
Here. Good. Nick, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been around the Parkway probably since the late 80s. I met a beautiful lady, and she invited me to go to church down there. But, that was kind of a requirement before we could get much further. So anyway, so I've been around since the late 80s and then got involved with the Parkway Alliance around the turn of the century. I've been involved with logistics. I have two beautiful children, a beautiful wife, Jo Helen, 34 years, and my son's at Princeton getting his PhD in kind of a neuropsychology. And then my daughter is just got her master's degree from University of Georgia. Both of them went undergrad there, and I'm an alumnus from there. But my daughter just got on with the state. She'll be working to give grants for cultural arts for the state of Georgia. She has a master's in not-for-profit management. So those are my greatest accomplishments here on earth. And then, of course, I've been president of the Parkway Alliance probably about 12 years. So anyway, serve on the Development Authority over in Douglas County and been a part of the Aerotropolis, Alliance since it started, one of the founding fathers there.
Good. Well, all I can say to you is go Dogs.
That's right.
A
lot of money spent up there.
Harold, tell us about yourself.
My name is Harold Reed. Again, I've been a resident of South Fulton since 2000. Have been involved in numerous organizations. I guess the one I've been most heavily involved in was the Cliftondale Community Club. And it was through my association with the Cliftondale Community Club that I became the representative to represent the club on the South Fulton Parkway Alliance. I have worked with them for probably the last 12 years, 14 years. It's been an eye-opener in all that I have managed to learn as it relates to the development process. And hopefully we can continue to feed that information into those people around us so that we can get the level of development we so richly deserve here in South Fulton.
Good. Well, guys, first, let me thank both of you for your willingness to serve in your capacities. And I think that you're doing a really great job. Let's start off. Nick, when the Parkway Alliance first started off, a young man by the name of, what was his name?
David Lee.
David Lee. David Lee was the president. I was the vice president. And the county had a vision at that time to go down there and do something with the Parkway. And let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about the early years.
Yeah. Of course, you were there before I was. I was around, but didn't know to get involved. But I know originally the discussion of getting the road might have been initiated by Harvey Malier and some folks. I think probably some major landowners down there. And then I know you and a few other folks got involved, like we were talking about. A lot of landowners probably involved. And then when I came along about 2000, we had a lot of developers at that time and the publics. You remember we had Neil, I can't remember Neil's last name, but we had some folks that helped us get the publics, to come in. And then I was just representing the church there where we hosted the meetings. And, one thing led to another, and we had, different presidents. I think Sandra was there just prior to me coming on board. And anyway, but it was a great place to meet folks. And then, just kind of historically, we when we went through the downturns in the economy, we lost a lot of the developers. And we had to kind of ask ourselves, hey, what's our purpose here? Of course, we went back to our mission statement, which involves promoting quality and development along the corridor or the South Fulton Parkway through, education as far as what does it take to do development, everything from water, power, sewer. We even had Georgia transmission lines. We had, a lot of major landowners and developers present. Obviously, around 2011, 2009 through 2011, we helped the Department of Transportation do a traffic study, several things like that. We hosted charrettes, sponsored kind of by the ARC, to kind of figure out what we wanted the Parkway area to be. So a lot of those things, just helped us progress as far as setting an overlay. There was a beautiful overlay kind of set up. And then, of course, as you know, we went through changes where cities were formed. We had the largest, unincorporated area when you were commissioner there for a long time. And then, of course, the city of South Fulton was formed. And so we have several cities along the Parkway. But in general, that's kind of the overview. More recently, we've had a lot of focus on safety, which you can never not focus on safety when you've got a road like that with a lot of growth. So this past year, we worked very diligently, or past 2 years with GDOT. We had that one area at Derrick Road where, the trucks were making left turns, into 70-mile-an-hour traffic. And so we've got that rerouted, or we played a role in getting that done. But if you go back in time too, we also, promoted quality development, everything from the one end of the Parkway to the other, including the Aerotropolis, all the way down to the river where Foxhall is located. And there's some new development there that we can maybe talk about later if you wish. But that's kind of a little summary as far as the general history of the Parkway. And now we have a pretty robust, group of folks that have been active all these years. They're very educated as far as quality development. And one thing I would like us to talk about, which I know you would as well, is, the disparity as far as what we've been getting compared to the rest of the, state or region or whatever, and how we can hopefully, draw in, more services like medical, higher end retail, and things like that, because we've got a lot of disposable income and educated consumers in that area.
Well, let me say this. I want to go back a little bit further in this conversation of how we got started. I got to give a lot of credit to the Parkway and its inception to Michael Hightower, because he was instrumental. I mean, they'd do a lot of blasting and everything else to get that road through there. And Michael at that time was the commissioner. But what I want to make clear is this. In this inception of the Parkway, the vision of the Parkway, the Fulton County Board of Commissioners made one thing very clear, that we would not have any warehouses past Mason Turner Road. That's right. Mason, am I right now? It's not Mason
Hunter
Mason.
Hunter Mason.
Hunter Mason Road.
Correct.
I want to make that perfectly clear, because I mean, that's been a fallacy for many years, especially now as it turns to the Parkway. We were trying to do is to take, the vision was to make the rest of it residential, commercial, and to have a 300-foot buffer on both sides of the road. And I think that's people have to know what the vision was and what we were looking at when we got started. So we changed a lot since then, but mm-hmm. I think it's good that the people know that this is what we really started at. Harold, do I hear you?
Well, again, you're giving me history that I was thinking about, the fact mm-hmm. that from what it was originally envisioned to be and what it has morphed into are two different entities. So mm-hmm. now we're in a situation where We need to make the best of what we had. And I think it's starting to take hold because a lot of people, and Nick, you led some of these early tours where you brought developers down South Fulton Parkway, and they all had this strange look on their face saying, I didn't know this was here. So one of the things that I know we have done through the Parkway is expose it to the people who can develop it the way it was originally intended to be developed. Now, because of some of those shifts that have happened over the years, yes, it's become somewhat fragmented, but it still represents a major transportation corridor through an area that is ripe for development, both residential, commercial, and institutional, i.e. business parks versus truck parks.
Right. Harold, that's a good segue into what he was talking about when you're talking about disparity. Let's talk about that a little bit, Nick. What's your view on the disparity you were talking about?
Well, obviously, I'm a logistics guy. And as far as balance goes, I feel like there was a zoning, obviously, that was called TCMU. It's supposed to be town center mixed use. But there was a caveat in there that you could pretty much do anything. And that's where the imbalance, started early on. And it wasn't highest and best use. And obviously, being a developmental highway, I mean, if you look at 400 years ago, it was a road to nowhere as well. So anyway, that's what kind of opened the door originally. And you're right, that 300-yard buffer that we had with the overlay that we had. And fortunately and unfortunately, there was the transition of it becoming a state road and some of those things that changed. It was actually, we were able to at least get the grass cut more regularly and some things like that. And but anyway, so that development started happening. We weren't pleased with it. Obviously, I was representing my church, and there was a warehouse put right in front of Mount Vernon Baptist where the Parkway Alliance meets. Right. And I understand too some of the powers that be that are in power now inherited some of that zoning, but what you do afterwards is always a challenge. It's like as far as being a leader, sometimes you get blamed for things that happen prior to you get there, and then you try to do all you can. So what we've done is try to educate the community. We showed up and represented the Parkway. We also hosted the charrettes by the ARC, which reemphasized the results from those charrettes that we held. That was probably, I can't remember if that's 16 or so, was that we wanted basically what the original overlay was, but also we understood that we wanted to be, sustainable, green, kind of friendly, but have the development with density at the intersections. And that's somewhat happening now. But like you said, stopping around Mason Road in that particular area was kind of what we were hoping. And then it would phase into retail, kind of like where you've got the Publix and some other things at Cedar Grove. And then it would turn into, housing and things like that. And possibly in Douglas County, which is not part of that, where it crosses the river, there's Foxhall, and there's a beautiful development. They've already dropped about $200 million down there coming in. It's a wellness area called the Preserve World Center. And anyway, there's a lot of development there, but institutionally, like Harold was saying, one of our goals was perhaps one day to have maybe a university of universities there, or where multiple universities could come in. And that was some things that were going in on the Douglas side. I happen to serve on the Douglas County Development Authority board and help push Foxhall. And then, of course, one of the things that the Parkway Alliance did was We had a gentleman come through with a new initiative about Serenbe, and I actually, being a non-developer at the time, thought it was a good idea to have the kind of zoning that they had in that particular area, where it's a 70-30 green space to developmental areas. And so Serenbe, at least the concept of it, we were stakeholders, so we voted for that. And they've gone through a lot of challenges, but been successful on the other end, because that's literally a $2 billion development there.
Okay. Let's talk about this. And we're not here to talk about, we just talk about economic development and what we can do on a corner. This here not to bash any city or any elected official. And having said that, standing where we are today, to both of you guys, standing where we are today, how can we merge a conversation of cooperation to get us some of the vision is not going to be recalled, it's not going to be reclaimed. But how do we get some of that vision back, working through our neighbors, because our neighbors can do what they want to do in their government, but just working through our neighbors to get us at least partially where we were before?
Harold, go ahead.
Oh, I think one of the best things we could do is sit down and talk about mutual needs and how they can be fulfilled working together. Now, I'll say it. What happened was developers who had originally bought land along the Parkway looking for a quick buck found that what they wanted to do couldn't be done the way they wanted to do it.
Right.
Now, the court cases we went through, Bill, from Cliftondale Community Club, some of the things that were proposed to be developed along the Parkway that at least looked like they might fit the original vision, but they weren't done in a way that could be sustained.
Right.
So when the downturn hit, developers said, hey, I got to get something for my money. And the big thing at the time was speedy delivery. And that's where the warehouses came in. Mm-hmm. And they said, hey, I can sell this land, put in 300,000 square foot warehouse. Everybody's going e-commerce. I know I can get somebody to buy this if I put it up. TCMU allowed them to do that because, as you recall, that property, most of that land was unincorporated Fulton County up until 2006, 7, 8. When the developers saw that there was a chance of the new city could be formed, they said, hey, wait a minute, this new city is going to push these rules that we don't want. So let's go into another city. Mm-hmm. That's when all the annexations took place. Those annexations took place. They went into Union City. And each time one of those parcels was annexed, two things happened. First, it was annexed, then it was rezoned immediately to TCMU, because it was in that period, 2006, 7, 8, when the idea of an international warehouse city first surfaced from Union City. They all saw this as a way that they could make all the money in the world. The road was there. It directly connects to the airport. Imports coming in and out from the airport. They saw it as a perfect situation to take advantage of. Well, e-commerce came and it's still here. But all of a sudden they found out e-commerce didn't require 18 million square feet of warehouse space. Therefore, some of those warehouses that were built on spec, they're empty warehouses sitting along South Fulton Parkway now. Mm-hmm. Now, What's going to happen with that, I don't know. However, the environment has not been completely killed. The reason it hasn't is because the thing that drew most people into South Fulton still exists, and that's the green space. Now, in some cases, warehouses were built right up to the line, and there's not a lot of green space. But in other cases, there is still some green space. Now, what we have to do, and this is where the conversations come in, is collaboratively figure out how to integrate both things that hopefully will take advantage of whatever commerce is there, but at the same token, develop spaces that serve the people, that fit those things that they told us during the charrettes they wanted to see. And, you know, no matter how you may try to slice it and dice it, we have the rooftops. We have the disposable income. We just have the stigma that unfortunately has been placed on South Side or anything south of I-20. And those developers who said, I'm going to give it a shot, i.e. Publix, there's a reason Publix has, what, 4 stores, 5 stores within the city of South Fulton, because they see they can make money. For whatever reason, I know of at least 2 different cases where Kroger had plots approved and they backed out of it. That's Kroger's loss. But now we have to make sure we get the message out to those developers who want to see the area thrive, want to see the area grow, want to see their investments last more than just a 10-year cycle of a warehouse. Those are the people we have to get in touch with and get them to come and take a look, because the people aren't going anywhere. I've been here 24 years. Where am I going to go? I like it here. There are a lot of people like me who are going to be here. They need to be served. Anyway, let me get off my soapbox.
That's all right. That's good information, Harold. Nick, you know, in your vision, how do we reclaim the dream also?
Well, one of our visions this year is, obviously, I told you about the continual focus on safety, because that's one life saved is, you know, can't put a value on that. So one of our main focus this year, other than the safety, is to promote quality development. So we are targeting, you know, the first thing we did, our first meeting 2 weeks ago of the year, we hosted the state's Center of Innovations leader, David Knuckles. And I can't remember every Center of Innovation other than I helped start the Center of Innovation for Logistics, which ironically is something we've got plenty of. We don't need more of. But we hosted there because they have technology. And, you know, when there's someone that wants to come to the state of Georgia, the Georgia Economic Development Group hosts them. And so, you know, we wanted David, who also resides nearby, to come and also educate us on which one of these centers of innovation we might need. Might be, you know, we might have a pharmaceutical company that wants to put a headquarters here. There's the institutional things with education that we've talked about. But, you know, if you think about it from the retail side, there's not an Apple store south of I-20. And, you know, probably 40% of the people out here use Apple products. And we got to go all the way to Lenox or Perimeter or somewhere, or, you know, to get what we need, you know. So some of those things are pointed out. I mean, we had a meeting, an economic development meeting about the south side in the airport area. And I stood up at that meeting. It was held at one of the King and Queen buildings up there at the Perimeter. And I said, why are we having 700 to 800 people meeting on the north side to talk about the south side. I said, we shouldn't be hosting this at the GICC or somewhere, on the south side. And then every single, prospect or developer that I would give them a little tour. I had a little trip. I would start there. Everybody knew about Chick-fil-A and the airport and Naturally Fresh, Walmart.com, and you come down the Parkway. And I drove them down the corridor, showed them Serenby. I showed them, the beautiful spaces that we have. And a lot of people think South Fulton is where old Turner Field used to be. Every time they hear a crime report, on WSB, they call that South Fulton. That's not South Fulton. And so when I would take someone on a tour of the area and show them what we had, every single time without fail, they would say, I had no idea. So even years ago, we started an initiative. We got to sell the sellers. In other words, the developers need to understand that we can have highest and best use down here. We don't have to go for the low-hanging fruit. And that's why we were pushing for quality development of any kind along the Parkway to send that message that, hey, look, by holding out for a higher and better use, you can make more money as well, the landowner. What we had was a developer, and then, they had investors. So I understand that. They were zigging when they should zag, and they zagged when they should have zigged. So, they were selling low when if they would have just held out, those things would have happened easier. So with that said, what do? We've got to sell the sellers and educate. We've educated the community. The other thing that the sellers don't know is we have some of the highest disposable income and most highly educated people along the Parkway south of I-20. And we've got rooftops that are paid for. We've got, folks like Harold who, have their homes paid for. So they've got even more disposable income. Not that Uncle Harry's the wealthy guy, but he's got, you know what I'm saying? So that stigmatism, we've got to change that. So anyway, it's not a challenge that we can't overcome, but I think we're gradually starting to see that change.
So let me say this. Let me add something to what you're saying. Everything that you and Harold have said is factual. Disposable income, rooftops, things of that nature. I want to say two things about, number one, about these meetings or these programs that we go to, that we sit through and talk intelligently about things, but nothing happens. Okay? Is it worth our time? That's one first question. Number two would be, I think if you want something and your other tactics for getting it here has not worked for you, I think you must, through economic development or through whatever, find out what it is that you want, go after it. And there's only one question to be answered, Nick, and that is, what is it going to take me to get you to come here? That's the basic question. I mean, we can go sit there and talk intelligently all day, eat steaks and drink coffee and whatever. But at the end of the day, if we don't have some sort of commitment from a person, from a developer or a retailer, and I think the question is, what is it going to do to get me to take you there or get you here? It has to be done. That's secondly for me. We talked about, you remember years ago, on the Parkway Alliance, we talked about things like parallel roads along the Parkway. We talked about flyovers. All right. How do you think that conversation weighs today? Or is there a need to continue that conversation?
I think, first of all, like, we do have some natural parallel roads that could, we don't want curb cuts everywhere. Fulton Industrial is Fulton Industrial. It's one of the greatest developments done east of the Mississippi for logistics. It's a parkway, not an industrial boulevard. So, I do think some of that emphasis and our closeness with GDOT, we can pursue those things. One of our officers is on the board for MARTA. There's people that are pro and for and not and all that. But, inevitably, we need to make sure that we have the right kind of transportation. And, we don't, that's why we were working on the trucks coming in and out of the road. And I even told Douglas County, you need to promote Fox Hall, because if you don't, you're going to, the better development you do anywhere along the Parkway, the less bad development you're going to have. So I said, if you don't promote, say, Fox Hall, which, by the way, is finally approved, there's tax abatement and schedules that come. There'll be a top tier hotel there. There's already lodging and a very classy facility there that, we host meetings there at times, as well as, Serenbe and some other areas. But to your point, we do need to emphasize, that this location is basically an Aerotropolis corridor. It's a beautiful road winding through 100,000 acres next to the world's busiest airport. Why did the cancer treatment facility go all the way to Noonan? Well, it was in Noonan area because it has access to the Atlanta airport. Well, you just passed 100,000 acres, that was right next to the airport. And so, and we're glad that it's there in Noonan. But what I'm saying is we do need more emphasis on the people that can actually place their business. Now that there's not anywhere else to really go in metropolitan Atlanta, we need to set the bar high and get the highest and best use. And not only does the developer or the landowner benefit from that, the community gets some services that they need, like medical. So we've reached out to different, we're looking at, you look at Wellstar, Northside, Piedmont, and so forth. They all are trying to grab market share. Well, there's a whole market right here that, everything's not rural like it is maybe in Chattahoochee Hills. So that can work against us as well, because sometimes they don't think the people are in the area. I don't know. I mean, some involvement with the state is, as far as if we can leverage their resources, like I was talking about the centers of innovation. There's an aerospace group. There's logistics, transportation, which we've got plenty of. We don't need. There's technology. We've got things going on, and we've even had major data centers along Douglas. It's actually called Data Hill over there on, north of us there in Douglas County. So a data center draws a lot of power, has a few high-paying jobs, but it's a great alternative towards versus having another warehouse. So
I think when people do have data centers stuff that it goes away from, we have to answer the question why. I think that if you've been to Noonan, okay, Noonan is bombing. I mean, Noonan is growing like you've never seen. Over on the Bullsboro Road area, you got 7 Piedmont hospitals, 5 Piedmont hospital facilities. On that one road between Sharpsboro, which is like right at Noonan, and past all of the retail and stuff, you got about 5 Piedmont hospitals. So there's a reason why they came, and I don't think the airport may have some benefit to it, but the retail and everything that's down there, I mean, that's a draw card. I mean, I go to Bullsboro Road. I'm not going to tell you, I go there. I'll sit up there. One of my favorite restaurants is down there in Noonan. It's called, what is it called, Lord? Green Tomato Bistro. Okay. I go out there.
Well, Neil, let me interject here, because I use the example of residential development in South Fulton.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until one particular developer said, hey, I can do some things down there. And that one developer developed Walden Park, the lakes at Cedar Grove, Union Crossing, what's the one off Stonewall Hill? Once he started developing down here, everybody said, hey, they do have money to buy homes. And everybody started coming in here.
He
Then
started from
tearing it down.
an airplane, right?
Huh?
He started from the airplane. Am I correct? That's the guy that saw the land from the airplane flying in.
Well, I don't know where he saw
Yeah.
it, but you know who I'm talking about.
I know you're talking about. Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
happened.
And he said, let me get involved here. And once he started making money, more people started making money. What
Uh-huh.
we need is that first person to say, and Harrison may be that person. He very easily may. Or that person that I was referencing earlier may come back again once interest rates fall back down. But it's going to take somebody doing something different for us that is just like what they do in other parts of the area.
Correct.
And be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Then everybody's going to be lining up to try and get a piece of the pie.
Well, Harrison is doing a big project in South Fulton now. I think it's called Cedar Grove Village.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, a big project. And I talked to Harrison about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and he's committed to support South Fulton Parkway.
Right.
Yeah,
and even that development that they're looking at putting over on Cascade Pomona Highway, even though it's not on the Parkway, once that comes out of the ground, and I know it's going to be successful.
Yeah.
Once that happens, then everybody else is going to say, hey, it works. Developers, they like to mimic what somebody else did and was successful at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I talked to Harrison today, and of course, you know, Harrison Sr. Is 80 now, and his son, he probably wouldn't appreciate me advertising that, but his son is taking a big role, and he's an excellent person. But you know, they're gonna build a Merrill Park there, and that's what Harold is referring to. And I know that will be over. I know it'll be north of 2,000 homes, you know, and it's a lot of land. And what they did, one of the intersections there, Cochran Mill, they bought the connecting land to the Cochran Mill Nature Center. So they're going to, you know, obviously that park is going to serve a lot of people. It already does. It's a very successful park. You know, there's a lot of good things there. But anyway, so we see these things coming. And then, like I told you, there's a $200 million development next to Foxhall, just west, kind of due south of the river there, just within a half a mile of the river, I would say. So there's some things like that coming there. And of course, the Merrill vision that they had was to have a university center with multiple universities having research and things like that. There has been some connections that we've made to Harrison with one of the major universities not too far away. So anyway, so there's some things like that are kind of behind the scenes happening. And then we have other film industry, obviously looking at Chat Hills. I've been an instrumental person involved with the Lionsgate studio north of us on 92 at the intersection of Lee Road and Highway 92. What does that have to do with us? It has a lot to do with us because there's going to be 2,000 jobs created there. And our folks that reside in our area that'd be an easy commute for them. But then also the other film industry folks, there's a lot of, you know, we have a lot of entertainment people that live in South Fulton because they got to fly all the time. Mm-hmm. So we've got a lot of that going on as well. So that's another vertical market that we see that is, you know, pointing in our direction. Obviously with Georgia, I don't know if they're up to $6 billion now, but it's a huge part of our economy now with the tax incentives that the state has for the film industry. So anyway, those things are happening. And so we're praying for more synergy between these things, Bill. And like I said, when you take somebody down the Parkway, they said, I had no idea. And, you know, I know Serenbe is off the Parkway, but you know, there's executive housing there. And of course, it's a beautiful development and has a, it's in the Smithsonian for sustainability. People like, I had no idea this was here. And then you take them to Fox Hall. There's a beautiful clubhouse there. There's an overlook. You can see all of South Fulton and overlook the river there at the overlook there. So those are beautiful things that cap off a great bookend. So if you build two great bookends, we don't have to build one of them because it's the Atlanta airport. And like I said, a 22-mile parkway that's beautiful for the most part, winding from the airport, to the Chattahoochee River. It should be an easy sell. But anyway.
Listen, you have a question here. Lois has a question here from a viewer.
The question is, what is missing that would cause major companies to overlook South Fulton?
Exposure.
Exposure is a great word to describe it. One thing that we did find, and this is why we invited somebody from 75 Fifth Street, is that we found out that when the Cancer Treatment Center went in to Noonan, that the state really didn't have us on the map as far as knowing that land was there and ready to develop the right things. And so part of doing that is inviting the city in. I don't know if some of that's territorial or whatever. I don't get into the political landscape of it, but leaders, such as yourself and others, Bill, if they understand that concept of highest and best use, we don't have to settle. We can dictate what should come and what shouldn't come. You can change zoning. Just because it's zoned a certain way doesn't mean you can't change it. So those are the things that we're talking about. And then, it's educating the people that entertain the economic opportunity companies that are looking at Georgia. And that could be, yes.
Do we have an educational type video presentation?
We don't have the resources, but I would love to have that. I've seen some master developers. The master developer that I brought into Lionsgate, he did the same thing at Covington, where he had the flyover, and I think a lot of it was done with actual helicopters versus just drones. But no, we don't. We actually talked about having that kind of flyover down the Parkway. You come off the airport, the hustle and bustle of the world's busiest airport, you jump in a shuttle, and in 22 minutes, you could be out shooting sporting clays at Fox Hall or, other areas. There's other things. And you feel like all of a sudden you have access to the world's busiest airport, but then you can get away from it all as well. Fine dining and all those kind of things. But we need to fill that in. We got to fill in the gap between Serenby and Derrick Road, so to speak.
But I think the city's economic development department can help you with that. I think I need when you start talking about exposure, we're going to get out there. We're going to send that out and kind of whet people's appetite for coming to the Parkway. Now, Harold, you came out explicitly with exposure. Why don't you expound on what you're saying?
I am convinced local developers are well aware that we exist. However, this is something that's come out of our discussions with various speakers at the Parkway Alliance. When a major company is looking to do something in a certain area, they will go to the overriding governmental entity. In this case, the state of Georgia. And they will say, I am looking for A, B, C. The state of Georgia will send them to the places that already exist that mirror what they want to do. We have to somehow get the state of Georgia keenly aware of the developable land and its strong points, i.e. green space, close to the airport, et cetera, so that when those requests comes into the state of Georgia, we aren't an afterthought, but rather we become a primary thought for development. Now, we may have to do work on our end, fund charrettes again, to get up to, because the charrettes we did, I think they still apply, but they were done back in 2014, 2015, right, Nick?
Yeah, it's approximately.
Okay.
Yep.
But the face of the Parkway is different now.
Well, it is, but by the same token, you're looking for what I would consider consumer-faced development, because we have had the industrial-faced development already. We don't need any more of that. What we need are consumer-faced developments in education, in basic services, in retail services, and in leisure services. Those are the areas where we do not currently have any sort of footprint along the Parkway.
Can I interject something here?
Sure.
This is probably the most important piece of land that's ready to go, which is the southwest corner of Highway 92 and the Parkway. It's basically where McClure Road, the old gravel road that cuts between 92 all the way over to Cedar Grove Road, Bill. And, you know, my church is kind of just south of that. But here's my point. Somehow, I think the McClures back in the day had some connection there. It might have been somebody else, Bill. But we have a nice wide concrete bridge crossing over. That is the perfect access road to run parallel, but also 640 acres that somebody could do something that could be a game changer for the entire face. And it's got, what, 7-minute access to the airport? You know, we've got access to, I mean, don't forget, we got Fulton County's airport, Charlie Brown, for the private planes. So if somebody wanted to put a corporate headquarters along with something transformational, whether, you know, it was we've talked to folks about putting in some very different things that were needed. One was an Olympic training center, because of the proximity to the airport and our involvement with amateur sports, including track and field and things like that. But so there's a lot of different ideas. Obviously, we don't have the medical facilities that we would like to have as well, which I mentioned earlier. So that land right there, if I'm a developer, that's the prime piece. You've got some infrastructure that's already in there. That road is perfect. It runs perfectly parallel, already has the bridge in. So all you have to do is, it's limited to what the resources you would have to have to do that. And then economic development could be, as we do in Douglas, we do tax incentives, of course. People think, oh, well, you can't have that. Well, guess what? Google is now paying full bore on their taxes. And 5 years later, they did a $300 million expansion. And, here we are 10 years later, and they're paying full bore on all that over in Douglas. But my point is, it could be that too. We have
another question from the viewers. Dolores, go ahead.
Are you all familiar with HB 1180, which identified major changes that are taking place with Georgia's film tax credit?
I am not with the particulars of that, although I'm on a development authority board. I'm not sure.
Harold, do you know?
Okay, I knew that they were mucking around with the tax credits for the film industry.
I like your word. I hope you didn't slip.
Well, I mean, it appears, especially based on the sponsors of that deal, Right now, most of the economic benefit from the film industry is centered around the cities. And the folks who were sponsoring that legislation were not from the cities. Now, I think that it's a way of trying to say, give us some of the action. Now, God bless them, that's a good idea. They want to get in on the action. But you don't want to kill your golden goose trying to get an extra egg out. That's the way I look at it. So I know it was talked about, but then it got quiet. So I'm assuming somebody somewhere said, look, this is not the time, so back off. I don't know that for sure because I don't particularly follow closely what they do under the gold dome. Just based on what I saw them go through at cityhood, Anyway, so I knew about it, but I don't know where it stands right now.
Okay. Let's digress a little bit. I'm still hung up on this. How do we regain division? There's a lot out there now that we're not in control of. Nick, I do agree with you that the 92 in the Parkway, that node is very important. But the other important thing is that we do not control that node. And so if in fact there's going to be, are we having any conversations with Union City in terms of what can become there that would help us to kind of get our vision back in that area? That's one thing. The other thing I want to talk about is I am tired of running trucks off the Parkway.
Mm-hmm.
I call police. Okay, I call police all the time to get trucks removed for parking in the right of way. And I talked to Dana Lemon with the DOT, and Dana told me that parking a truck in the right of way is totally illegal.
Mm-hmm. It is.
And so I just want to make that clear. But first, let's talk about, are we talking to Union City about those three parcels right there at that node at 92 in the Parkway?
Yeah, we have. I've met with Vince a few times now. It's been a little while. Obviously, we didn't want the warehouse that was located across from the church there on 92, and it distanced us a little bit from Union City for a little while. But they're definitely invited, and we're a very friendly environment. I sat down with Vince, but it's been a minute or two, even though I did see him, and talk to him for a few minutes. But you're correct, because of as much as the Parkway is that they touch, or it touches the Parkway, it's very crucial that we have that relationship. And so, that's why I outreached to Vince. And this was probably a year and a half, 2 years ago. And of course, COVID and all the things that we all know that happened,
Right. Well, this is opportunity. I'm gonna give another question here in a minute. This is an opportunity for cooperation on those three corners of that node. Okay, Dolores has
I have a question and a statement. What role could economic development play in identifying and planning meetings with major players like developers, Georgia Power, and others to give the exposure?
You hear it? You want to hear it again?
Yeah, let's hear that one more time, please.
What role could economic development play in identifying and planning meetings with major players like developers, Georgia Power, and others to give the exposure?
Part of that, let me answer, because a player like Georgia Power or Greystone Power, if you identify a meeting time, they will be there, because any development is additional revenue for them. Right. They are not the problem. The problem is the different governmental entities, even though I know there has been outreach both ways over the years, they still have one hand behind their back when they talk to each other.
Yeah. So just to kind of emphasize exactly what you're talking about, from the Development Authority all the way, this came all the way from Douglas. We tried to do a memorandum of understanding between the cities. Actually, Chris Pumphrey helped me kind of put that together. But anyway, that cooperation is key. It may take kind of a more unbiased group like the Parkway Alliance to play a role in that, but the development authorities too. I think most development authority groups want the same thing from a local level, but to get them to communicate, because if one wins, another one wins, and I know it doesn't always work that way. But also mentioning the power companies, Greystone, it plays a major role with us. And of course, in the past, our history has been with Bill Davenport, who was a major player there. Greystone has kind of become more active with us, so we actually have Wayne Glover, who serves on our board. So we understand that too. So the power companies are there. I think the next part is to get the municipalities to agree. And that's why we pushed for and hosted those charrettes that the ARC, now the ARC, they have their limits, but they helped us have those charrettes to kind of reemphasize what we needed in those areas. So we've laid a lot of the groundwork. We just need to get to the next level. And having the same.
One of the heads of the ARC is a South Fulton resident.
Yes.
He heads everything, Anna Roach.
That's I don't know right. We love Anna Roach. Yep.
Yeah. I don't know if you talk to Anna or not, but it may be something that I understand the question that is coming from everybody on that issue. So look, we're gonna have to close it out. It's been a great time.
Yeah.
Talking to you guys. I mean, Nick, I hadn't seen you in a while. Yeah. Good to see you. Keep up the good work on the Parkway.
Yes, sir.
I know the challenges. You do that. I'm gonna keep getting trucks out the right of way.
Yeah.
Job or out of my neighborhood, out of my subdivision, and what can I say?
Can I say this, Bill? Before you,
yeah.
I hope some of the listeners who are absorbing this, they probably have some of the pieces just in their work environment, their friend environment, their acquaintance environment, maybe in their relative environment, to be able to touch some of these people that we're talking about. It may be a case of somebody who works in Alpharetta, but they have Alpharetta is a satellite office. By the same token, they know their company is looking to expand. They are the ones who might need to drop some dimes on people. Hey, have you looked at South Fulton Parkway? Now, obviously, everybody is not in economic development. Everybody's not going to have access to that kind of information. But by the same token, if you find yourself in that situation, don't hesitate to speak up.
Sure.
One line, Bill. 100,000 acres next to the world's busiest airport.
I got you. But it's been enjoyable talking to you guys, and maybe we'll come back some other time and talk about where we are now. What gains have we made? What strategies have we implemented? So I'll be glad to have you guys back on. But thank you all so very much. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Take care.
All right.
Great meeting.
All right. We're the World Riding Community Empowerment Group, where we speak life into the community. You can see us on WCEGradio.com, Smart TV, Roku, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and of course also the WCEG Network. The topics and opinions of those on the show and guests and hosts and are not those of WCEG Network. So thank you all for continued support. And remember this, in all you're getting, get an understanding.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.